Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
2 certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only 2 best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Would you like to hear a story?
Always.
You already know it. But
Oh, do I? I don't know what
I'm
story.
talking to them. I'm not really talking to you, but it's confusing because I'm looking at you when I'm saying
Well,
that.
you're looking directly in my face and asking me if I want to hear a story. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
For those of you who have been listening for 6 months or more, this will seem familiar to you. The other night, 6:45, I was eating dinner.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And I hear something, a horrifying sound. Water dripping in my kitchen. I look to my right and I see water coming out of the AC. I have an HVAC in the ceiling, coming out of the HVAC hatch in the ceiling. And I immediately burst into tears. Like the water flowed as freely from me as it did from my ceiling. And this will sound familiar to you because it happened 6 months ago. And I was like, not again. I literally was like, I said out loud, not again, not again, not again, not again, not again. I was freaking out. So I grab a big stock pot and a big salad bowl, and I put them under the 2 places where it's coming out of my ceiling.
How
I run
this has
to the front door.
To you twice now.
I know. I run to the front door, put my coat on because it's also like freezing and snowing. I jam my neighbor's doorbell and I'm like, "Argh." And he comes down and he's like, oh my God, I think my dishwasher is overflowing. And I'm like, yeah, I know it's coming out of my ceiling. Turn it off. And he's like, okay, I'm going to turn it off. And I'm like, you got to turn the valves off too. And he's like, I don't know where they are. And I'm like, find them. And then I call his landlord, my neighbor, who we are on friendly terms because of the last debacle. He was freaking out and like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I can't believe this is happening again. Let me call him. They turned it off. It's a lot less water than last time. Like a lot less. It was going for barely a couple minutes when we got it turned off. I think we averted a crisis. I think I'm not going to have my ceiling cut out. Again. We're going to see. I have a contractor who's supposed to show up. So this might get interrupted by a contractor. And also he's supposed to be upstairs right now repairing the dishwasher. It was the dishwasher. It hadn't been used in a long time. That is a judgment of my neighbor. It is. That's just a straight up judgment of what is he doing up there? Why is he not using his dishwasher? I'm very concerned.
Why didn't he immediately turn it off when it started flooding?
Well, I think he did. Questions. Well, he might have been in the shower or something. Like, I don't know. Like, anyway, he turned it off as soon as he saw it. But had to be going for a little while to get into my, you know what I mean? Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it busted a hose because it hadn't been used in a long time and it was old. And back in the same fucking place I was 6 months ago. I was like, this is the worst kind of deja vu. But it was a totally different experience in how minor it has been. And that I think it was actually so little that it dried up. And my dad and I like investigated, got our heads up in that thing and felt all around. Couldn't find any wetness. So that was... Okay, good. Yeah. But anyway, so I got someone coming to look. Well, and just sharing that, like, that just happened on a Tuesday or a Monday or whenever that was. And life does that kind of crap to you. Mm-hmm. And you are never going to be able to avoid it. And like, I did not react well. Let's just put that, like I didn't react well to that. So,
well, my house was slightly chaotic in a very, very different way, in a much more positive way, because update on
something that no one knew was a thing anyway.
No one knew this was happening. My boyfriend and I adopted a second dog. And this is a tie-in to our guest today because
Who loves dogs?
Who loves dogs and has a dog who shares the name of my new dog.
Oh.
So we have a 2.5-year-old rescue Bernese mountain dog.
It's Bernice, not Bernice. Bernice is like an old lady name. Bernice.
And her name is Georgia. And she's a big old teddy bear. She's almost 90 pounds. And she's adjusting well. But, all rescues have some skittishness and some past traumas to heal from. So we're trying to rehabilitate her a little bit. But that is the very different kind of chaos that I'm experiencing.
I prefer dogs
to I know.
home repairs.
I know.
So I've had a fair number of dog chaos in my life too.
Oh, you've had a lot of.
And so
Scarlett has been very accident prone.
Just rather not deal with that. So
yeah, that's a little
rambling update about the state I find myself in, which is exhausted and sort of hungover on stress. So this is CB's episode.
This is a long-standing client of yours.
Very long-standing. One of the longest. Also,
you probably have been intending to bring her on the podcast for a long time, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been in my mind, and I just feel like, I don't know, I just felt like asking her this time. I can't tell you why. I think it was just good timing. And that's the topic of our conversation, as we talked about timing. This is by far the most like just rambling conversational normal person interview I've ever had. It's also probably the one where I do the least amount of interviewing and the most amount of just talking about my life and how I feel and how we relate to each other on a lot of levels. So it really is just like a straight up conversation between the two of us about how we feel about
I think that's
timing and the darker side of getting attached to timing and needing things to work out on a certain plane. Obviously, that's not a uncommon theme on this podcast, but we kind of got into the underbelly that you have to investigate in yourself when you're super attached to particular timing and outcomes. Mm-hmm. So it's not so much hey, here's some tips and tricks and tools. And it's more of hey, do you need to be real with yourself and get kind of uncomfortably honest with yourself? In which case, this is a good conversation for you.
I like normal people interviews that are more conversational because that's not really what they're about. They're not about tips and tricks and strategies.
No, just a very real, honest, meandering conversation between two friends is what it really was.
Well, let me introduce her.
Okay.
In her own words, I am Catie Beth, CB for short, 31, living in Charlotte, North Carolina with my 2 pups, Georgia and Charlotte.
They're also teeny tiny Yorkies.
She's got a teeny tiny one named Georgia, and I've got a big old 90-pound Georgia. Couldn't be more different. By day, I'm a headhunter for a creative and marketing recruiting firm. By night, I won't shut up about personal development, astrology, Harry Potter, books I'm reading, my nieces and nephews, new recipes I find, and being witchy. I'm a side-hustling ENFJ, Slytherin, Enneagram 3, Wing 2, and a longtime fangirl of Clarity on Fire. I'm stoked to be part of the podcast as a normal person. Find me on Instagram at CatieBeth19. That's CATIEBETH 19.
Okay. Enjoy this conversation with CB, aka Catie Beth. I mean, I interchangeably call her that.
We'll be back at the end.
And we'll be back at the end. Hey everyone, Kristen and I forgot in our intro to make note of the technical issues I had during my interview. So just want to let you know that the first 8 minutes or so of this, we had some internet issues and then the internet completely crapped out on us and we used a backup option. So the rest of the interview after that is crystal clear. So enjoy and thank you for dealing with the issues at the beginning. Hello.
Hi. How are you?
I'm really good because I'm Zooming with you, which is not something I've done very often.
No, we're mostly on the phone.
I know. This is probably one of the most, long time coming type of conversations I've had, especially since you and I have known each other longer than probably most people I've ever interviewed.
Oh, wow.
I think so, because you and I worked together in 2015, maybe 20. I mean, was it earlier than that?
No, I think I found the quiz summer 2014. And then I think you and I worked together January 2015.
Okay. Yeah. So you've been like in the Clarity on Fire universe for 6.5, going on 7 years, which is kind of insane. So yeah, it's been a long time that this has been coming.
I'm fangirling so hard. I'm so excited, so flattered.
Also, I probably said this in the introduction, but I think that you are another example of someone who has been a client of mine and then become a coach. And I share that because today is actually a very momentous day, because today is the day you actually officially enrolled in coach training, and you have been talking about doing this for 5 or 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What a day.
I know. It's so momentous. And, it kind of goes with our theme, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just drew the 10 of Cups, which is about like celebration and
like wishes coming true and like ultimate fulfillment of, your goals and dreams and stuff.
Yes. Yes. So
she's been
funny how that works.
Cards for us. That's a good card for everybody, just, to get at the beginning of this conversation.
Yeah. I think it's, good things are coming in general.
Yeah.
We're all doing the work. So.
Okay. So here's what I envision. This is kind of like a side chat. It's just between me and you instead of me and Kristen. Okay. Instead of a normal person interview. I mean, it is a normal person interview, but usually when we sit down to have a normal person interview, we have like a very clear kind of like, here's the points we want to hit. And you and I don't really have that. We just have a subject that we want to talk about together. So we're going to talk about it and we're going to see where it goes. So
I love it.
I asked you what you wanted to talk about and you said timing. And I was like, well, that's always relevant. And I still struggle with that. I will probably never stop struggling with that to some degree. So yeah, let's talk about it. So when you say timing and like, having had struggles with timing, how is that relevant to you?
Oh, I think it's relevant in just timing of trusting universe, insert here. And then, but also realizing that I have to do the work and that timing is trust, but it's also not just, well, I put it on my intention sheet. I watched The Secret and I put it out of the universe. Like, yes, I put it out there and then I did the work for 5 years. And then I figured out my financial situation. And then the timing worked out of me getting into IPEC today. And so I think that was where my timing came in, where it was like, so often I want to vice grip the timing. And I'm like, okay, kids by 23 or like married kids, God. The Southern gal checklist. And then it doesn't mean I don't desire and want things. And, but I think it's trusting the timing that it's not up to me.
Oh man.
If that makes sense.
Of course it makes sense. It's my biggest struggle too. So one of the things that I'm having to kind of come to terms with is that can be a huge gap between being aware of when you want something and your readiness to receive that thing. And I think as soon as we realize we want something, we tend to then think, why don't I have it yet? And then we get pissed off that we don't have it. And there's like a whole journey we've got to go on usually to get from the point of realization of a desire to it manifesting in real life. And that has been my, like the burden I carry is that.
It's, and it's like, I'm going to be the same where I will constantly be working on it. And I think when you say like burden, it makes me think of another card I drew the other day. I think it's the 10 of Wands.
Oh yeah, the ones like holding... with and it's like a burden on your back and your back is breaking from all the weight you're carrying.
And it's like, but what can you put down? Like, there are things you can put down and then have that trust. And so it's not easy. I'm saying it as I'm like, and then you just put the thing down and you trust.
As if that's just like a snappy little thing one can decide to do. Okay. Yeah. So what are some of the things you knew you wanted, or maybe know you want now, that you haven't gotten yet and are still working toward?
Oh, I think for me, it's really been a shift of since I just turned 31. So,
yes, happy belated birthday.
Thank you. I know you don't like birthdays, but I love birthdays. So
I like you liking
maybe
birthdays.
Not 30. Yes. Okay, fair. So I think now it's shifted where like what I wanted at 25 when we first met, it was like, I want to live close to town. I want to drive this car. I want this job and these material things. And while yes, there's still the things, now it's like, I want a lot of land where I can have a women's retreat and be able to facilitate both things that I want to do in my own witchy woo needs and manners and full circles, but also a place that women can gather, whether it's through the university where I advise. And so now that's kind of like my next big, like, all right, this is what I want. Like I want basically a retreat center, but focused on like women and, stepping into our woo. Mm-hmm. So that, I mean, it's big and it feels huge, but I think that's kind of the next thing that gets me really excited.
I mean, you would be really good at that. So I see that for you. But that's a big thing and it's not overnight.
Yeah. No. I have to come out of the broom closet.
Come out as a witch. Okay, we're back. We had some technical difficulties and we edited it and now we're back.
We are here. We're in a full moon.
Oh, you're right.
We're in the shadow period of Mercury going retrograde on the 30th. So
this is Mercury retrograde's fault.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So where we left off was we were talking about your goal of starting a retreat center and facilitating women, finding their spiritual selves. And that's a really beautiful, big, lofty goal. And there are so many steps in between then and where you are now and where you are. So I'm curious, what are the steps? So coach training is obviously a huge step in that direction, which you literally just technically started today. So that's a whole thing you've got to go through. Not that you can't facilitate stuff before you're a coach, but becoming a coach will help you so much in the journey to become someone who can do that for other people. So what else has got to happen between now and the realization of that goal?
Coach training, A, check. B, a location. I am very grateful and lucky that I have, my family has property in North Georgia, but I feel the pull to Charlotte. Charlotte is home now. Charlotte is, really where I want my roots to be. So step 2 is, maybe instead of buying a house next year, I buy 50 acres of land and I get a tiny house and me and the girls live on a tiny house.
The girls being her Yorkies, Georgia and Charlotte.
Yes. They are in their crate so that they will not be interrupting us.
Yeah, they're very opinionated ladies.
I mean, it comes very naturally. Oh, I don't know if you just heard that, but
I didn't.
Okay. They just said hello.
Oh.
So maybe that's kind of been mulling in my head. Definitely coach training is kind of that step 1. I think step 2 is definitely, I love my current job and trying to figure out what this means from a holistic perspective, because, in my head, it's that 10-year goal. And so there's a lot of years between 1 and 10. So the first things in my mind are definitely coach training and really stepping into it and not taking it as, this is my step into the women's retreat, but more of really just immersing myself into it this year and knowing that while, yes, that's a long-term goal, my goal this year is to finish and to get that started. And then I definitely think step 2 is the land and the actual location, which feels tangible within Charlotte when my lease is up at my apartment. And tiny houses you can build that into a budget if you're just buying a bunch of land with nothing on it.
That's true. I mean, I love this idea. I can't wait to come visit after the pandemic and like you can lead a retreat and I would just sit there so happy.
Yes. We're going to put it out there.
So what are some of the things that you wanted 5 or 6 years ago that you now have, but that you maybe weren't ready for at the time you realized you wanted it back then?
I definitely think it's a lot of the material things. Like I live by myself. I have a beautiful home. I have really curated a space that, I work from home now. So it's a lot of me time. And I think 5 years ago, I would have taken this space and really the privilege that I do have and the, what I've been afforded in my life, I'm very grateful for. And I think 5 years ago, it was like, yeah, but I just want to live close to town. Whereas now it's like, I can take, the little trolley to my office in a post-pandemic world, which I'm so excited about. I'm going to play Uptown Girls and just like try and hang out the trolley and like pretend I'm in San Francisco.
I love it.
But 5 years ago, it was just like, I just wanted it. And now it's like, wow, like it came to fruition, but also I've worked hard and I have had to, I think I had mentioned the financial thing, but like I was in not a great place financially a couple years ago. And I think realizing that and having some pretty serious and tough conversations with myself and with, really just with myself, I think with you too.
Yeah.
And I think I wouldn't have been able to do that 5 years ago. I would have just kept sweeping that under the rug and being like, well, it'll work out. Whereas it was kind of a monster staring me in the face.
Oh, you're calling me out. And now I feel like I have to tell a story that I wasn't sure when I was going to tell this story, but I think this is appropriate time to talk about this.
Yeah.
So, everyone who listens to this for the most part knows that I have gotten a lot of things in life that I wanted, but one of the things that I still don't have is, partnership and event, and I want kids too, and I don't have any of those things.
Retweet.
And yeah. And, on the outside, it's like, oh, look, I'm basically living my best Sex in the City life from the outside. I'm like that age and I'm living alone in a very, in a nice space and I have nice things. Now I don't have for the most part, there's a few holdover things, but for the most part, I have adult possessions, and I have
an armoire,
right? And
an IKEA desk,
and I have a mortgage, and I have, jobs where people rely on me, and it's just, and I have a dog, and I take care of her, and it's just like, wow, I'm a real adult, and yet those things, which are, I think. Not everyone, you don't have to be an adult to do those things, but I don't have those things. And it's been a long time. I've my journey through singledom has been very long and winding. And
same. And
yes, and I've also been the type, maybe this is my type 4 Enneagram self. I've always been very, some people you meet, they're not uninterested in relationships, but it's not a focal point for them.
Yeah.
They're just they're maybe more focused on their career or some other, facet of life that really drives them. I've always been very relationship oriented, not just romantically, with friends too, but I have always, that's always been a really important thing to me. And sometimes career feels at times it's taken a front seat and at times it feels like it's taken a back seat to my interest. And so it's not a casual thing. It's no, that's a defining part of life that I'm not interested in missing out on. Yeah. And so, I've been interested in romantic relationships since I was like 10 years old or earlier. And so as an adult, when you finally get to the age where you're like, oh, it's appropriate now. Like, I could get married at 9. I just was a little kid fantasizing about weddings, right? But at 24, you're like, well, I could do that. Like, I have friends who have now done that. And so then when you're single for, most of your 20s and, well, at least a good half of your 20s and now into your 30s, it becomes like you start really asking a lot of questions about timing, to our point, because you're like, it's easy when you want something and it hasn't happened for a long time for you to start asking yourself, what am I doing wrong? Because clearly I must be doing something wrong. And I have a couple of thoughts about, like, are you doing something wrong versus you're worthy and you don't have to be perfect in order to get what you want. I totally believe that. But just because I want something, this is something I'm realizing recently, again, doesn't necessarily mean that you were ready for it the whole time that you wanted it. And so one of the things that I've had to, kind of recently take inventory of is, were you a match? Let's just say, like, since you were 25 or whatever, were you a match that whole time to someone who is actually a good match for you? And the answer is unequivocally no. I was not a match for what I actually want that whole time. There's so much emotional dredging that you have to do. And I had to heal my attachment style, right? Like, you can't be, you can't have feral cat energy, which is totally me, like anxious avoidant attachment style, where it's like, I want you to love me, but I also don't trust you. So I'm going to scratch the shit out of you. And then I'm hoping you're still going to come closer to me, even though I've scratched you, because that's how you prove you love me. That was totally me. And so, that's a big thing to get over. And so that you don't, like, abuse somebody else. That's just one emotional thing you have to get over. The financial thing too, to be honest. You talked about having to get that in order, and so did I. I think that when you're a business person, you can get really numb and drained from how hard you've worked. And there was a long stretch of time where I was just so tired that I was just kind of putting in the bare minimum, and it was working. Like, we were making money and I was supporting myself, but I wasn't thriving yet. I was getting by and I was doing okay. And I just kind of hoped that I could do okay long enough that I would eventually meet someone and then we could do life together and my life would be so much easier, because people with dual incomes have easier lives. Let's just put it out there, right? When you have someone to split your bills with and to, like, do chores with and to go to the grocery store half the time or whatever, you have more time and energy to yourself. And so I kind of had to realize, you could wait around for someone to come into your life and make your life easier. Or you could, maybe have to pull yourself up and really get that shit in order for yourself without any help. And that's what I had to do. And so, and that was a ringer of sorts to go through, like a good ringer, but a ringer nonetheless. So I've been thinking about that and being, like you said, kind of brutally honest with myself about, was I ready the whole time that I wanted this thing for the best version of what I wanted? Because if the goal was to be not single, I could have easily achieved that. Like, I could have found any old person to fill that particular gap in my life. That's not what I was interested in. So, no, that wasn't just the goal. So anyway, that's a very long story. And this is, like, supposed to be about you, but it's also supposed to be a side chat between the two of us.
And that's total mirrored, paralleled. Like, I mean, we can just tumble right into that very easily.
Right.
So.
Right. So there's this sort of reckoning that, like, kind of what this could be interesting to see how this applies to you or how this might apply to people listening. But one of the stories I've been telling myself for a long time is, you've been single for years and years and years, like so long, like egregiously long. And that is technically true. But what I've been realizing recently is that if I measure it more by how long have you been a match to what you want, it's so short. of a time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, have I been single for, 8 years or something? Or have I been single for like 6 months? And I think it's more like I've been single for 6 months. Because everything that existed before then anyway is gone. Like it's in the past anyway. We can't access anymore. It doesn't really exist anymore anyway, other than in my memory. So what I call it doesn't really matter. It's more about what I'm a match to now. So I'm curious. I don't know. I'm curious what this is bringing up for you.
Oh, I think it's so. I started working with Madeline, our mutual astrologist. I know y'all have had her on the podcast. That's how I found her.
We talk about her a lot too. I'll link to her.
She's wonderful.
Great.
And so I've signed up to be like, I get monthly readings now as part of her Patreon. And probably 3 years ago, I guess it was when you were like, you need to talk to Madeline. I did like an hour-long reading with her, and it was the beginning of my Saturn return. And like we talked about, because I'm very similar to you. I have had my whole wedding planned since I was 9. Like, it's even now, it's like my Pinterest boards. I'm like, all right, so I got that, I got this. Like, I want the big party, but it was. I mean, I've been single since I was 18. So 13 years. And like you said, have I been single for 13 years or have I been single for 3? Because I bring up 2017, the start of my Saturn return where, we talked about relationships and we talked about, because, I had brought up that I do want to meet someone and be with someone. And it's funny because in that reading, she talked about the timing. And she was like, if you do the work, what the cards are saying, what energetically things are saying is that, we're probably looking about 3 years out. Just from an objective point of view. And it's so funny because now, like, the more we talk, and I think she was like, the same thing is happening with her. And I think she's similar in age and like single like we are. She was like, Rachel is getting all of these, like, romantic partnerships are there and they, you are ready for it. So I think I had to do the work the last couple of years on myself because it was like, I loved myself in like a flippant way, but like,
right.
I had to
sure. I like myself. It's just fine. Yeah.
I'm great. But like I had to shine light on some dark places that I hadn't looked at in a long time. And that work is not, and of course I was like, I'm ready for it to be done overnight.
Oh man. Yeah. Impatient, like,
right.
Is my middle name.
Exactly. So, and so I've been putting in the work and sometimes it almost just felt like, why? But I think there's just been like a mental shift in the last 6 months of, I really, I'm handling the pandemic well. I live alone. Like I know a lot of people are struggling so much with the isolation and the loneliness. And I'm so grateful that where I was 3 years ago, I would not be sitting here being like, I'm grateful for this time to spend by myself because now I feel so ready to step into that place of like, I'm ready to find a partner. And then kind of like closing that in conversation with Madeline, I talked to her, I guess it was a couple days before my birthday, and she pulled all 4 kings and basically was like,
damn,
you have to date. She was like, this is not going to be a scenario of like, you're not just going to like meet him and be like,
oh,
this is
the
it.
worst
We're getting
thing
married.
to hear. Oh my God, I hate that.
I was like, I wanted to meet him and 6 months later we be engaged. And like, that was it. Like you're telling me I have to put work into finding this partner.
That's my absolute worst case scenario. But I also totally understand the value of it. Like, that is that's so funny. When we get off, when we stop recording, I'm going to tell you especially why this is funny. Because I'm not talking about it on the podcast yet, but I will tell you why this is funny. Okay. But, I think that it's like after you've done so much work, you're like, are you shitting me that you're telling me I have to do more work? Like, what did I come to this planet to do? Apparently just work my ass off until I die.
Right. Like you're saying, like, I just looked at all these dark places. Like I'm finally at a spot where I'm like, oh, I'm feeling confident. And you want me to go put myself out there and be like, please reject me. Like, I know that's not what's going to happen, but in my ego, in that, you know, lizard brain is just like, ugh. And it's a pandemic. I'm like, how do you want me to date in the middle of a pandemic? Like,
over Zoom, I guess.
So.
Wow. Okay. So there's so much coming up in what you just said that I want to reflect on. One is that I think one of the things that we're zeroing in on here is that you can see timing multiple ways. And one of the least empowering ways to see it, though probably the most common way of seeing it, is that it's a passive thing that you are subject to. Like it just happens. You don't have control over it. You don't have any say in it. It is what it is. And to a degree, that's kind of true. Like we don't have control over timing. We cannot force things to change just because we want them to change. There is sort of, I believe, a divine sort of organization to things. I don't think anything is completely set in stone. I think we have free will, and there's other people have free will, and there's so much that can change and evolve and morph. But, you know, that means the other way of seeing it is that you do have some influence over the timing. You'll never know exactly what you did or didn't do to make timing, you know, shorter or longer on yourself. But I think that you can absolutely make something that is very likely to happen, like meeting the right person for you. Let's say that's bound to happen. Let's say there's a 98% chance that's going to happen. Where you come in is, are you making that journey a lot longer and harder, or are you maybe making it easier and shorter on yourself? Yeah. And you have influence over timing. And I don't know, like, if I had it to go back and do over, would I own up to some of the things that I was trying to kind of avoid or not look at earlier so that I could get what I wanted sooner? Maybe. But then I think about how would that have affected the other areas of my life? Like, you know, would I have been ready because there was this other big thing I was trying to birth, and I couldn't have done that if I'd been with somebody, right? Like, what would the podcast ever have existed had I met someone 4 years ago and like gone on a totally different trajectory? And this has been such a great expression of my creativity, that kind of thing. Yeah. But I do think that one of the things that's coming up here too is that you and I are being, you know, pretty honest with ourselves about where were we copping out and potentially making the timing harder on ourselves because there was a thing that we didn't want to look at. Yeah. And that's one way if you want to grease the wheels, at least. Like, do your part to make things as flowing as they possibly can be, still knowing you're never going to control it, and that's okay. But you got to take your head out of the sand, and you got to be willing to like look at the hard, ugly stuff, and then, you know, put in your part of the response. You know, show up. You be responsible. Put in your side of the work, so to speak. Yeah. And like, you know, maybe I could have done that sooner, maybe not, but at least I did it.
Yeah, and I think it's back to timing where 18-year-old me would be appalled that I am 31.
Oh my God,
single,
right? Oh my God.
Living like she would just be like, you're not married?
You don't have kids?
And I think you don't what? Like
I thought I would be married and have like a kid by 24 when I was 18.
Oh yeah. 23 was my number for some reason. I don't know why.
I mean, that's like a child to me now, right? 9 years later, I'm like, that's barely an adult. I don't know how, I'm so glad you didn't get married at 23. You'd probably be divorced right now.
No, my parents. So when my mom was 31, she was getting divorced from my dad, and she had a 6 and a 7-year-old. So
that's wild.
Again, it's back to the timing where it's just like, and it's amazing how, you know, a whole other topic, but things do not fall far from the tree, whether it's nurture or nature. That's a whole different conversation. But it's amazing how it's just like whether it's generational trauma or generational joy. Like I've been working through that recently of just like, you know, I feel free to now be who I am. And maybe that's because my mom was 31 and getting divorced and had 2 children and was now a single mom.
Right. It's like you caught up to her timeline in a totally different kind of way, right?
Yeah. Like, whereas like I joke that I'm a single mom of 2, but it's a single mom of 2 dogs. So
it counts. It counts on some level.
Like, I give all the single moms props because like I know that is
it's much harder with kids and it's hard enough with dogs. We know that.
Amen. Exactly. So I think that's the timing too, where it's just like I am so grateful that I was not married at 23. And that's not to knock those that found their person at 23. I like you, I am all about relationships and I love love. And really from probably like 26 to 29, I was getting my best girlfriends married. And that was very important to me. That dating wasn't important to me then. Like looking back on it, it's like, wow, I couldn't have been, you know, both my sisters got married in the same year and I was their maid of honor. Like all of my best friends got married from 2016 to 2018. And I was able to throw myself into that. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. And so looking back, I'm like, wow, like if I had a boyfriend, I would have been like, I don't know. I'm hanging out with Paul or whatever his name is. I don't know why Paul came to mind, but
just like, just a dude, right? Like a standard run of the mill,
right?
Like factory issue dude.
Yeah. Yes. Like I don't want the factory issue dude. Like,
no,
I want my like, and I think that too is like what just like with intention setting and, you know, putting out the type of man that I want to meet. And I've released a lot of the physical expectations. Whereas, you know, at 20, it's like tall, like has a nice car. Like now it's
right.
I want someone who is funny, who's emotionally available, who is able to problem solve with me. Like I'm a problem. I'm a fixer. I am not a dweller. Like, you know, so now that I have kind of some of those like 5 main, like almost like human characteristics, that's what I've put out there. And we'll see what comes back this year. I mean, we could be having a totally different conversation in 18 months. So I'm sure we would be.
Completely agree with you. Why don't we check in 18 months and we can see how it went? Yeah, I totally agree. You know, there's some, I think of when we're talking about timing, I think if you're thinking about it as a relationship between you and something higher than yourself, whether you call it the universe or God or spirit or life, whatever you call it, I don't care what you call it, but it's a tough love relationship. And timing is one of the ways that the universe tough loves us. And because it just never immediately instantly gives you what you want. I mean, sometimes if you have very little resistance and it's a small thing, sometimes it's like, oh, I thought about, you know, oh, I need to pay my friend back $10, then you find $10 in a coat pocket. That kind of stuff happens.
Yeah, it does.
But when it comes to the big stuff that you want, like I want a relationship, I want a dream job, I want to move to a different continent and explore the world. Sometimes, almost never are you just going to instantly get that.
Yeah.
Like life is very much a plot and a story. And we go through the hero's journey in life the same way that the stories we love and the characters we love go through, you know, that arc. And, you know, they decide they want something. They set out on an adventure. But before they go on the adventure, there's the denial part. There's and I think you and I maybe got stuck in a little bit of the denial part for a while before we answered the call. That's a part of the hero's journey. You answer the call. And there's so many ups and downs, and there's like that really low point, like 2/3 of the way through when you think it couldn't be darker and you're never going to get what you want. And then you get out of it. So one of the things I'm thinking, like in this hero's journey arc, is that how do we know when we're refusing to answer the call? Like, you and I both admitted that we probably weren't looking at stuff that we needed to look at in order to get beyond where we were and ascend to the level of what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And that it may have made our journeys longer than they needed to be, and made the timing more difficult or just longer or whatever.
Yeah.
Is there anything that comes up when I ask you that? Like, how did you know that you were copping out a little bit, or like denying, like refusing the call, so to speak?
I think for me, it's really been probably the last couple of years where, excuse me, my beliefs is of ease and is of pleasure and is, you know, I truly believe that the human experience, you know, obviously we're going to go through emotions, but really I was finding that when I wasn't in ease and like flowing almost, where there's like, I'm very emotional. I cry all the time, but it's that like ebb and flow of like, okay, wow, the synchronicities match up, where it's just like, you know, maybe I'm thinking about doing that, and then something comes up that's like, you can do that right here. And, you know, I think for me, it was getting blocked when I was trying to control it. And I was trying to take over that whole journey and not just the, you know, well, what is going to bring me joy and what feels, and I don't mean ease and like, you don't have to do any work. Like, let's sit back.
No, but what feels aligned is different, right, than easy.
Yes. And aligned to what I want. And that is also fluid. That changes. And, you know, I also believe in free will, and based on that, that's going to change things too. So for me, it's just really finding that ease and that alignment. And I truly believe that, you know, the universe talks back to us. God pokes back. Like, it's just, you just have to pay attention. And I'm still learning that. Like, it's not like, oh, and then, you know, but I think there's signs in everything. Like I get signs from Instagram feeds, from just taking a walk with the dogs. It doesn't mean they're all ones that I'm like, oh, I need to do this today. But I think it's just starting to listen to my intuition is what has been my key.
One of the things I've had to come to terms with recently too is that for a long time, I interpreted signs incorrectly. I thought that, and on some level I knew, but then I think I just took them a little bit too literally. On some level, especially when I started getting signs, particularly about relationship stuff, like I got them really in earnest like 6 years ago. I started getting a ton of signs and it never really stopped. It still hasn't stopped. But at the time I took it as a like, oh, this is around the corner. Because I kind of thought that's what signs meant. And speaking of timing, I don't know that just because you get a sign means that it's like oh, look, your exit is coming up. That's kind of what I thought. And
well, I think that's the human part of us. That's like, well, time is this construct that we've created.
Right.
Whereas it's like, yeah, you might have felt like that nuggle 6 years ago, but maybe that was just like kicking you into motion to run into this person that, you know, 6 years down the line or whatever it is. Like it's
right. Or, you know, that encouraged you to do this thing that got you that thing that got you this other thing. Right. Like there's a whole domino effect that could be happening. And also to encourage you not to give up. And recently, this is a very recent thing that I've had to work through. People are learning about all the stuff I've been working through more than they've probably learned about it. It's been a long time. But one of the things I've had to work through recently is that I was annoyed at the universe for the fact that I feel like all I ever get is signs and no reward. All I ever get is like more carrots at the end of a stick. And I'm like, I'm done with this seemingly endless parade of carrots on sticks. Like at some point, it's demoralizing to keep getting signs and then it's like IOUs or something and no check. And but I had this sort of dialogue between me and the universe. Like I wrote it out because I needed a conversation.
Yeah.
And the response was like, would you have preferred the alternative? Which was like, you got no encouragement. You got no signs. You felt completely out in the cold. And I was like, no, obviously that's not what I would have preferred. So they're like, well, you can't have it both ways. You know, you can't be like, I like having signs, but I also like that it doesn't mean that what I want is right around the corner. Well,
yeah,
I'm sorry. That's just kind of how timing works. And if you'd rather be encouraged, you kind of have to deal with the fact that you might need to get broader about how you interpret that. And maybe it is just encouragement to stay the path. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean it's right around the corner. And it doesn't mean it's not either. Like, it's hard to interpret timing.
Well, and also in some aspects, we live in the future. I say that all the time. Like, I can get on DoorDash right now and have food at my house in 20 minutes.
Yes.
Like, I can, you know, in a non-pandemic world, there's a lot of things that are instantaneous. And it's like, where it's like, okay, well, if I can do it in this aspect, like, I feel like I'm Charlotte from Sex and the City, where I'm like, where is he?
I know. Think about that scene. I know.
But it's also, but then it's like, oh, but just, you know, I have to make sure I'm stepping into the person that I want to be so that, you know, I'm bringing that queen energy and not in like a masculine, or if it, more just in like I'm stepping into my own energy so that I can find someone that matches, and that, you know, we're both bringing a full cup and not, hey, will you fill mine up for me?
Right. Exactly. The little codependence right there. Yeah, I think that, again, if people are to take a filter question out of this that they can apply to themselves, it's, okay, so I want something. Am I, if I'm really, really honest with myself, how much of a match am I at this point to what I say I want? And maybe it's worth talking about for a second. How do you tell if you're a match? I think that you and I might have, you know, different takes on this, but personally, I think that you're a match when you've been willing to go do your inner work and you've addressed some of the things that you think you can only get when you have that thing. Like, oh, I can't be fulfilled until I have a dream job. Well, one of the best things that you could possibly do is to work on what might be blocking you from experiencing more joy and emotional satisfaction in your daily life now, while acknowledging that, yes, of course, when you have a dream job, you're going to be happier and more fulfilled. But there are so many things. I know this as a coach. There are so many things that block a person from being able to feel fulfilled in their daily life that have nothing to do with getting a dream job. And that if you got the dream job, you might not be able to enjoy it properly because you've got a lot of crud built up around you. Like you've got attachment issues that you're going to project on your boss. You know, you've got people-pleasing tendencies. You've got workaholic tendencies because you can't just sit still and do nothing without feeling like you're lazy or something. All of that is going to interfere with your ability to sincerely enjoy your life and your job, this perfect job that you envision having. So to me, I think that's the question is, okay, is what I want something that I think having this is the only way that I can get to that state. And then, you know, start actually trying to cultivate within yourself that state before you arrive. That's how you become a match to it. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you also have to listen to, do I want this, or do I want this because, I know for me, it was people-pleasing tendencies. Do I want this because people will like me? Do I want this because my parents will be proud of me? You know, insert reason here. Or do I want this just because it makes me happy and it's what I want? Like,
right. So you got to question what you want, period. Like, you know, is what I want even what I want?
And ask those questions. Like, take out, you know, what comes up when I'm like, oh, well, I want, before it would have been like calling myself a witch. I would have been, now my family just laughs at me, but I'm like, 10 years ago, it would have felt very like sacrilegious. And it would have felt that I was like coming at their religion by saying, I identify with, some witchy woo things and I self-identify as a witch. And that, now I can say that and I say it in like a joking manner, but 5 or 6 years ago, I would have had so much anxiety saying that.
Right. Yeah. So again, like I think our brains think anyway, that the shortcut is just the perfect thing will make all of that irrelevant. Like if I find a career path that allows me to be my most witchy self, that will somehow, through the power of how much I love it, and it's, it will override my deep familial discomfort and like issues with religion and all of the crap I grew up with. That is not the case. There is no perfect thing that's going to come in from outside of you and heal all of your baggage to the power of its like overwhelming love. It's just not going to do that. Not that I don't think that love can heal on some level. Of course I think that. And I think that, people grow a lot in connection to each other. And I think that if you, romantic partners teach each other so much and they grow together so much and they do heal each other so much. And there is a lot of work that you've got to do, first on yourself to be a match to the thing that you really want. You just do. And so for me, because I asked that question a second ago about like, how do you tell if you might be kind of avoiding like doing that work and being really honest with yourself? For me, it was never really a thought so much as it was like a kind of persistent but very like low grade feeling that I couldn't quite escape. I don't even know how to describe it. It was really just like a ickiness, like a very slight ickiness that I would feel when I thought about that thing. To me, that's how I know that I might be copping out a little bit and that I might be avoiding something that's good for me. Is when I think about it, I feel a little bit icky. And it's not because I'm it's not because anyone's judging me or anyone's expecting it of me. It's because I kind of know it's the right thing to do and I'm not doing it.
And I think it never stops. Like, this is not something that's like, oh, we figured it out, Rachel. We did it.
No, because like my Enneagram type 1, very closely followed by my Enneagram type 4, is a bit of a type A perfectionist. And so I have recently had to stop myself from making a list of every possible little thing that I might be copping out on so that I could get it off my list. And I'm like, no, calm down. There's always going to be something you probably are avoiding and that, you probably need to look at, but it's okay. You don't have to literally cross them all off your list in record time just so that you can try to speed up the timeline. I'm probably trying to control the timeline again.
Oh, well, my Enneagram 3 is like, and I want to achieve things.
Right. Yes.
Check off the achievements. Like it, and it's just, and yes, those things are great. But timing.
Okay, we could keep talking and talking and talking, but
I know
this was a very like winding, and not in a bad way, but just we went on a little adventure type of conversation. And I don't know, I think there's plenty to be gained here. And I think it was as much about timing as it was about how willing are you to be honest with yourself? Like, how willing are you to look in the mirror and say, yes, I really want this. And I can tell there are things that I probably need to do that are good for me to get me to that level. And I got to be willing to put in that work while also while also giving myself like a little bit of grace that I don't have to be perfect and that, things are going to work out the way that they're supposed to work out. And I bet that you and I in 18 months or whatever, we'll look back on however far we've come between now and then and say, I'm glad it happened the way it did. I wouldn't change anything. I think people do end up saying that.
Yeah.
But I don't want people to walk away feeling like, oh, great. Now I have, if I want something, I have to force and I have to push and I have to change, I have to control. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying if you want the timing to be a little bit more in your favor, then it requires kind of brutal honesty with where you might be avoiding and not totally owning up to your responsibility to make it better.
Amen.
Not exactly what I thought we were going to end up talking about, but that's fine.
Hey,
pull a card for us at the end, will you?
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
So we started with the 10 of Cups. Great card. Yep. Don't know how we're going to improve upon that.
Hey.
But it is what it is.
Hey, I always think I think that was just like the excitement and the culmination of long time coming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. All right.
I like the sound effects.
Excellent. All right. Okay. So we got the 5 of Pentacles. And it's a dying rose in the one that I'm looking at. I have to look at my little...
Okay, but that's
sadness
that's the
and illness.
Yeah, that's the one with like the beggars outside of the cathedral and it's snowing and they're cold and they've got bandages on.
Oh, wait, here. I drew a second one for clarity, and it's the 4 of Wands. And that is completion and celebration.
And also the happy marriage card.
Yes. Actually, we'll just pull 3, and then that's past, present, future. So in the past was sadness, the 5 of Pentacles.
Right.
In like the present.
Feeling poor, right? Like it's like kind of like a poverty mindset type of thing.
Yeah, it's very much like that, like, woe is me, like...
Yeah, the copping out.
Sadness.
Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The not doing the work. Okay.
And then we've got in the present, we've got the 4 of Wands. So that's
great
like completion,
card.
Celebration. Great card.
Yeah.
And then in the future, we have the Ace of Pentacles, which is prosperous beginnings.
Prosperous beginnings. The journey starting over, right?
Mm-hmm.
But better than where we started.
Aces are always, new cycles, new beginnings. And then Pentacles are homes, money, career, generosity. So the cards took us on a journey as well. Yeah,
I really like that. Okay. See? Thank you. Look at you using your witch self to put a punctuation mark on this conversation.
Love my woo.
This was good. This was such a different conversation than I've ever had about timing. We've talked a lot about trusting timing and surrendering, and this was a little bit of like let's look at the ugly underside of some of this stuff. And that's a slightly new take, and I really like it. So thank you for going on that journey with me.
Oh, thank you for having me on the journey.
Yes. And nice. You have now graduated to a level that many of my, there's this journey that I inadvertently have taken people on where you start out as my client. Some of you, because you've been interested in coaching as a career for as long as I've known you, become coaches, and then we become coach colleagues, and then like it just evolves our relationship to a new level. So.
Oh, well, I already told Madeline, I was like, you're both going to have to be at my wedding so that we can like be I think it's the 3 of
100%.
Cups card. That's like the 3 ladies dancing.
The 3 happy ladies dancing together. Yeah.
Yes.
I already told Madeline that she has to be the one who marries me, like like actually conducts the ceremony. And she said she's down. Yes. So
she said that she was like, I'll marry you. And I was like, oh, my cousin Mary is a priest. So she's got first dibs, but like, if she didn't,
we could do like a ladies sort of like ceremony the night before or something, and she could preside as like high priestess. You took the words
out of my mouth. That's what I told her. I was like, we'll be at my family's property in Mississippi. Like,
exactly.
We're totally going to do some woo things the night before.
Exactly. I'm there whenever, wherever. Just send me an invite. I'll come.
I got you.
Okay, this was awesome. I will talk to you soon. And
Great.
guys, please leave a comment on this episode. I would love to hear how you respond to this one. And if you feel a little bit maybe called out, let's talk about it. I love getting the opportunity to call people out. And eventually I'll call myself out too if I need to. So
I think you did in this. Like, I think we both were like, calling yourself out is not an easy or a fun task.
No, but it's the only way to get what you want. And
amen.
I think TBD on that, but I think you and I will both be able to come back at some point and report back positively on the fact that the work does pay off. You're not doing it for no reason.
Amen. We are.
All
awesome.
right. Well, couldn't love you more. And I will talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. I don't have them together yet, but I will pull together some past episodes around this same theme. If you want to sort of continue on and dive deeper into this conversation.
Yeah, because we've talked about this in
lots of ways,
other episodes.
Lots of ways. I'm gonna have
from
to
different angles.
I have to whittle it down to the ones that I think you should listen to next. But I will. I'll find some good ones and I will put them in the episode notes. By the way, you're gonna laugh. I just got a Spotify account. I know that most people have had one forever. I think I had one and then I never logged in. And so then I re-downloaded it.
Getting with the times.
Well, I just listen to all my podcasts on Apple Podcasts. And, I buy albums because I want to support artists. Mm. So and I also don't buy that much music. So I buy Taylor Swift's albums when they come out. Those are the last two I bought. So anyway, I can't find how to look at episode notes on Spotify. So if you're not listening on Apple Podcasts, I don't know where episode notes are, if they even exist. So if you ever want to reference anything we talk about in the episode notes, or you want to go today, look at the episodes I've put together after this, you can always just go to clarityonfire.com and click the podcast tab. And if you're listening same day or within the week, it'll be easy to find it or scroll back and find it. If it's a year later, just Google Clarity on Fire and the episode title, and you'll find the show notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's usually, they're always on our website. Every single episode has show notes on our website. So you can always find them there. Yeah. Okay. So we will be back, Tuesday?
Yeah.
With the Magic 8 Ball? I don't know what it's going to be.
I don't even know whose turn it is to choose. So we'll have to figure that out.
So we'll all find out together on Tuesday what's coming out.
Okay. Bye-bye.
We will see you then.